Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this episode. And I shouldn't say us, just a little bit of information here. So as you all know, we were at GTEC earlier this week in Oklahoma City. It was a conference put on by the NCBFAA, the Education Institute there. And it was a good show. It was a good conference. They had lots of good education sessions, good speakers. I mean, the speakers were really good. The exhibitors, and that are there have, I've been going to these types of shows for many years, and it seems to me like the vendors' booths are like stepping it up quite a bit. I mean, you're not just going there to get a sales pitch anymore. You're going there to get, sometimes you talk to vendors and you come out of it like with a mini session, education session. I mean, they'll talk to you, I should say, because we can talk to you and just, you know, what are your challenges, what are your problems, etc. You know, we captured quite a bit of content, few hours in fact. So this week, because of that, and because Andy's traveling, we just don't have enough time. There's no way we could have gone through everything and giving you a episode. So what we decided to do was that we'll take all that content, cut it up, edit it, and give you 2 episodes. So those will air next week on Tuesday and Thursday. But this week, what I did is that we had an interesting interview with just the 2 government agencies that we talked to there. One of them was the Census Bureau, and the other one was USDA. So what I did is I took those clips, combined them, and made an episode out of it. In fact, I think it's better to do it that way, because if we would have put it in the wrap-up show for next week, you would have only gotten 1 or 2 minutes worth of the conversation. But their conversations were so good that I think it's better that you listen to the whole thing. I hope you all think the same thing, but please let me know. Let us know if this is just not the case, but we hope you enjoy this. Thank you again, and enjoy.
Hey folks, we're at GTEC in Oklahoma City, and we're coming down to the first full day of seminars and all that. I had a great little reception last night, and then tonight there's going to be a big shindig that folks will get to do some country and western type dancing. We're going around and saying good morning to some folks at the different exhibitors here. So with that, I'm going to come over here and we're going to say hi to the Census folks. So it's Gerard Horner, I say, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
How long have you been with the government?
Over 34 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So as with the census and things, what would be your top thing that you want to kind of get across to these service providers and folks around here?
Great. So a lot of people associate the U.S. Census Bureau with counting people, but we come to GTEC because there's over 300 importers and exporters. But in our economic directorate, we also publish the balance of trade figures every month. So all these importers and exporters supply the U.S. federal government with the trade statistics so that we can publish the export and import and balance of trade figures every month. So it's a knowledgeable thing to know that the Census Bureau doesn't just count people, but it counts commodities, and these exporters and importers provide the data on the export and import of those commodities. Thank you.
With that, I will say that I have used that in the past quite a bit and looked at the trade balance or imbalance at times in the top countries that we're importing from, or top countries we're importing to or exporting to, excuse me, and all that. But as far as if somebody is somewhat of a rookie in their compliance area or at a service provider, what would be one of the best ways for them to get up to speed on the census, like the resources you have?
So I would first contact us. We got a lot of resources. We have a 1-800 number. If you've never done any exporting, we write the export foreign trade regulations, so we can actually ensure that you're given the right information. We also provide our own automated export system trade compliance seminars, which it might be a good thing for a member to attend. But that's why we're here today. We're on a panel later on this morning with members of the freight forwarding community and the exporting community to make sure people are aware that we exist and that we write the export regulations.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope it's going to be a good conference for you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we are going to keep moving around here just a minute, and we'll come back to you in just a few seconds, all right? All right, we're back, and we're going to talk to a couple of folks that are presenting at the GTEC conference. Now, you're presenting today, is that right?
Yeah. We're presenting today on, no problem. We're presenting today on ACE for exports or AES filings, so the export declarations that get transmitted electronically. And we're presenting with Gerard Horner of Census, Kim Calicott.
Hi. Yes, yeah. We're excited to be presenting and providing some of the information that Jerry talked about for freight forwarders and USPPIs.
So what companies do you work for?
I work for Mallory Alexander International Logistics. We're a freight forwarder broker.
And yourself?
I'm a lawyer, so I work for a law firm. So we work with a lot of forwarders and customs brokers.
So trying to cross the T's and dot the I's on those contracts and things of that nature and whatnot, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right, but also providing regulatory guidance. So when people have regulations that aren't clear or they need to get a compliance program set up, we advise on that as well.
One of the things it'd be interesting as far as like AES filings and things of that nature for export. With that, I guess if somebody makes a mistake with today's systems, are there enhancements now where an exporter can actually go in, or do they need to have their broker or somebody go in and make those corrections?
It depends on how it's being filed. If it's being filed by the authorized filer, then I think the filer needs to go in and make the changes. But if the USPPI is doing it themselves, they can go in there and make the updates directly. Mm-hmm. And in fact, at our talk, we're going to be talking about that exact hypothetical.
Well, that's one of the things I keep hearing about as far as in the past, excuse me, where there would be an error made and somebody would get all bent out of shape over it. And it was like, well, yeah, it needs to be corrected. And it was always so difficult. So, do you have just the three of you that are doing the panel then?
Yes. Yeah, it'll just be the three of us.
Okay. So what's your one takeaway, I guess, is, as I always say, is like, what's the nugget of knowledge or the action that somebody needs to take away from your presentation?
Oh, that's a good question. I think maybe just being diligent and looking at the details, making sure that the people that are transmitting know what they're doing. That would really be the big takeaway, I think, for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think the same. I think it's a data entry job in some respects, getting that data in and out. But I think the big takeaway is to remember that it's a compliance task as well. So people need to be trained on it. They need to know how to report, to escalate issues internally or how to find guidance from the government when needed.
Let me ask you, I'm going to pull you back in on this if you don't mind. So as we're talking through on this, from the census side of things, when you see, again, everybody's, they want to get it filed. They want to try and get it filed early and those kinds of things. And when people, as you just said, look over your details and all that, and they do it too fast, they cut corners, and they file it, and then there's errors. What kind of negative domino effect does that cause from a census perspective?
We always say that the quote-unquote term is do it right the first time. So even if that takes a little bit longer to do, make sure you're educated in advance. Make sure that you do it right the first time, because the domino effect can be very, very detrimental to a company. Your compliance can go down. Your shipment can be seized and detained. Mm-hmm. A lot of bad things can happen. So take your time, do it right the first time. Make sure you're knowledgeable in what you're doing. Get the proper, authorized agents or attorneys involved to help you support what you're doing.
Well, I will say that all of that is excellent. The one thing is, if you don't do it right the first time, the way I always say it, you wind up being the pooper scooper at the end of a parade, right? So you've got to clean it up afterwards, and you might as well feed the beast rather than clean up after it. So with all of that, I appreciate it. I hope you all have a great session. Folks, we will see you. We'll talk to some more folks at GTEC here, but have a great day. Okay, we got somebody else to talk to at GTEC. We're at GTEC Conference in Oklahoma City, and we're on the first day here. We're going around talking to several of the exhibitors. So now we're in front of the USDA booth here, and there's some really intriguing things that I'm sitting here going, and what is it, the Spurtle stuff or whatever, I think? Or
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking tomorrow. and I'm here to talk about the Lacey Act. It's one of the first conservation laws in the United States, and the USDA is slowly implementing the import declaration for plants and plant products. The Lacey Act basically states that anything that is imported, exported, transported has to be legally harvested around the world. So we're putting in we're phase 7, the last phase of non-composite plant materials. So in about 9 months, everything that isn't 100% composite plant material will more than likely be required to have an import declaration stating the scientific name and the country of harvest. So,
well, before we go too much further, I'm dumb as a box of rocks.
Right.
Can you tell me what the difference is between a composite versus a non-composite plant material?
Sure. A composite plant material would be something like paper or cardboard, something where the plant has been ripped apart and then put back together in either a mechanical or chemical bond or something like that. We'll be doing composites after phase 7. So phase 7 is going to have a lot of furniture. That's where the spoons come in. It's going to be kitchenwares, housewares, everything, bulk cork, wicker, some more essential oils. We regulate 3 now, but more essential oils made out of wood and trees and things like that.
I've never thought about it, but the essential oils, when you just mentioned them, going, okay, I wouldn't think about that being under the Lacey Act, but you're right, it's coming from wood products and all that.
Yeah, we regulate sandalwood, cedarwood, and rose du bois right now, and then we anticipate some additional essential oils. And all of those HTS codes that will be flagged for Lacey in about 9 months, we're going to publish those in the Federal Register around October of this year.
So you're looking at it publishing in October to take effect, the first of the year?
We'll publish in October, and then 6 months after publication in the Federal Register, that's when we'll require the declaration.
Your point of action here is going to be that look for the Federal Registry notice for USDA's publishing of the HTS that's going to be flagged for, I guess, import declarations, right?
Import declarations. The form is the PPQ Form 505.
Okay. And with that, just make note of it. You're going to have 6 months in there, but you need to take down or download the file and run that against your own parts database and things of that nature, and with your purchasing folks that you're looking at. So I'm trying to give you a cross-reference here. So anyway, sorry about that. Tell me your name and how long have you been with the USDA?
My name is Erin Otto, and I've been with the USDA 18 years.
Fantastic. So how did you get into this? Is this something you're like, okay, I want to be a USDA agent?
You kind of fall into it. I have a degree, my undergrad is in forestry, and my graduate degree is in entomology. And I just, applied for federal government and just sort of fell into it, and then you just sort of move along the USDA chain. It's a large organization, and there's a lot of very cool jobs out there.
Well, excellent. That's one of those things that you go into. It's almost like you fall into the compliance arena or fall into being a customs broker and all. It's just like one day you're there, and it's like you stayed too long after work one day, and it's like, all right, we're going to put you in here. Oh no.
Yeah. Basically, they're like, oh, you know trees. Okay, you could do Lacey Act. That seems like okay work for you. So.
All right, let me say, you may not appreciate this, but from what I understand, the latest when the Lacey Act was modified several years ago, it was like it came through in the, at like midnight kind of thing. And a guy got through and everybody's going, where the heck did this come from? And certain kinds of reporting. Have there been improvements with the Lacey Act from a standpoint of the importer's perspective? And I know there was a lot of reporting requirements on the USDA. Have y'all been able to, I guess, start reporting the statistics of what you're finding to justify keeping on with the regulations of the Lacey Act?
Yeah, so we've been collecting declarations, import declarations, through the phases since about 2009, I believe. And what we've found is that it is definitely a deterrent for illegal logging and illegal deforestation, which I don't know if you know this, but it's the 3rd largest transnational crime in the world. It's right behind counterfeit goods and drugs. Because it's simply so easy to go out there and illegally harvest plants, wood. It's used by large crime syndicates to fund other sort of nefarious things. And it's hard to look at one log and say that was legally harvested and that's not. They get mixed together, they come into the port, and some of that is cheap wood that is undercutting U.S. businesses. So, we're always looking at the data, we're looking at things that don't seem above board, so to speak, and we pass that on to our investigative partners. So Lacey Act is sort of a whole government approach. So USDA, we're dealing with the policy and the collection of the declarations. But when we see something strange, we pass it off to our law enforcement partners, whether it's CBP or Department of Homeland Security investigations or FBI, and then it gets adjudicated in the Department of Justice.
Okay, with that, is there anything that, as far as like over the last several years, then a trend of what you're finding as far as from certain countries that seem to be nefarious in supporting illegal harvesting and all of that?
I can't say too much about that because there are ongoing investigations. I can say that one of our USDA employees has been called in a federal lawsuit that is supposed to take place, I don't know, in the next 6 months, and she's going to be testifying for the government as a subject matter expert. So I can't really go into too many details. But
Well, here's where all right, let me change it up a little bit for you. It's a little bit more than just good morning, isn't it, folks? All right, so if I am a person in a company and I'm trying to source out to, I'm a furniture manufacturer and I want raw goods, or I want to have something manufactured off shore and then come in or whatever. Are there some countries that I need to be aware of that seem to be problematic in, complying with the Lacey Act and all of that? So that's where I was going with that.
Yeah, I mean, we have some of our NGO, non-governmental partners have done some studies. I know that the Environmental Investigative Agency has done studies. There's always, the problem with teak from Myanmar. There's the possible problem of Russian birch. And then some things are filtered through larger countries, sort of, I wouldn't say laundered, but I would say that you get tropical hardwoods that go to a country, they're manufactured there, and that's what's put on the Lacey Act Declaration.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, it was just a little bit of a talk with the folks from the USDA and Census Bureau. We're hoping to get a lot more government officials. We talked to other agencies that were there, and they were more than glad to just offer their business cards and say, hey, you know what, contact my media relations people. Let's get on the air. We want to provide information. That's what the government is for, is to provide information. And so we're pretty excited to try and get some of these folks on the show, and we're hoping to bring something additional for you all. But for now, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and join us next week. Like I said, join us next week for more on the GTEC Conference. Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show, or would like to sponsor Simply Trade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.